The creators of the show, Jubilee, may not want you to know this, but some characters and events that happen in the show are directly inspired by real people in Indian film history. Jubilee has a kind of cult following. If you are like me and love retro music and films and fashion, this show gives you all of that and more with some history and a murder right from episode 1. Jubilee tells the fictional story of Srikanth Roy and Sumitra, who are the co-founders of Roy Talkies, a fictional film studio in Bombay in the 1940s. These characters are loosely based on the real-life Himanshu Rai and Devika Rani, the co-founders of Bombay Talkies, their real-life film studio in the 1930s. The show also uses fictional characters to represent certain aspects of Indian film history as well. For example, the fictional character of Niloofar represents the very rich history of how Tawayefs shaped early Bollywood and Bombay cinema, a topic that I will get into later in this series. Like I mentioned before, the show has a disclaimer from the very first episode declaring the series as a work of fiction, but this is just not substantively true. So in my analysis and review of the show, I'm going to give you my thoughts and focus on the Indian film history that inspired Jubilee and the many parallels that exist. Hello, I'm Tass and welcome to my YouTube channel. This video will focus on episode 1 of Jubilee titled Arg. Episode 1 is the most important episode of the show. In my opinion, it sets up the entire series. But before I start, in each video, I will share something that I love as a retro film fan. I love retro films from many film industries. Obviously, I have a special place in my heart for retro Indian films. This is not sponsored content. I just want to share it because I think you guys would like it too. I'm going to start with this vintage Bollywood film poster. I bought this poster a few years ago. It's a very famous still of the actress Madhubala from the film Mughal-e-Azam. I bought this poster from a store in India called Indian Hippie in Bandra in Mumbai. And Indian Hippie is a store that sells authentic vintage Bollywood film posters. They have hand-painted Bollywood film posters from the 1950s onwards. And perhaps even before the 1950s, if you want something that's actually very rare, you can go through all the posters in the store. Some are obviously cheaper than others. The rare ones can be very expensive. My poster is not hand-painted. It's a more recent poster. But if you are someone who loves retro Indian films, then Indian Hippie is definitely a store you want to visit for beautiful, vintage, authentic Bollywood posters. I think they also do have an online presence. There was a particular style that Bollywood poster artists adopted back in the day, and that style really became an art form, and Indian Hippie actually keeps that art form alive. So episode 1 starts with a picture of the character of Srikanth Roy. He's played by Prosenjit Chatterjee, who is an icon of Bengali cinema. He is amazing in this role. And the character of Srikanth Roy is described as a film producer and the owner of Bombay's famous Roy Talkies studio. Also, the character is from a very reputable family from Calcutta, and we are told that he completed his studies in Germany. The inspiration for this character seems to be the real-life Himanshu Rai. He was also a film producer and the co-founder of the 1930s Indian film studio Bombay Talkies. He also came from a very privileged family. He obtained his law degree at the University of Calcutta and then traveled to England to train as a barrister. But in England, he had a particular interest in theatre and in acting, and for a time he was a part of a theatre group called the Indian Players. So this was a group of Indian people who were theatre actors and performed across Europe. Himanshu Rai then went on to produce and star in silent films in the 1920s. His productions were usually collaborations with other European film industries, and in particular the German film industry. We then see a picture of the character of Sumitra Kumari, the wife of Srikanth Roy in this series, played by Aditi Rao Haidari. She is described as a movie star and an equal partner at Roy Talkies. The inspiration for her character seems to be the 1930s Indian actress Devika Rani. Devika Rani is known as the first lady of Indian cinema. She was a very beautiful and talented actress. She gained some notoriety in Europe as well. And she was also the co-founder of Bombay Talkies with her then husband, Himanshu Rai. Devika Rani and Himanshu Rai got married in 1929. In the same year, they traveled to Berlin in Germany to train at a German film studio called UFA. In 1934, they established Bombay Talkies together, arguably the best film studio in India at the time. I recently did this video on Devika Rani, so go check that out for more into her life story. The show is set in 1947, and this is where the show took a very different approach. Himanshu Rai died in 1940, and Devika Rani had left the film world by 1945. She got married to a Russian artist named named Svetoslav Rorik. So the historical incident that actually affected Bombay Talkies while Himanshu and Devika ran the company was actually World War II. After the declaration of World War II, many of their German employees were detained in camps in British India by the British colonial government. In the show, we are then told that there is this rumor of a new face at Roy Talkies, and we see a film canister with the details Jamshed Khan as Madan Kumar. From the first episode, Jubilee highlights how movie stars were actually manufactured and minted by film studios back then, especially in the 1930s, the 1940s, and the 1950s. This was not just something done in the Indian film industry. For example, Marilyn Monroe's birth name was Norma Jean Baker, and a Hollywood studio executive suggested the stage name for her. It was more memorable and a unique name that allowed her to stand out. Marilyn Monroe also spoke about how she had to live up to this persona that she and the studios created for her. In fact, before and after her death, many studios attempted to create their own blonde bombshell or their own Marilyn Monroe. Also, Hollywood's first South Asian star was Merle Oberon. Her birth name was actually Estelle Merle Thompson, and her nickname was Queenie Thompson growing up. She also had a stage name to be more memorable to her audience. So in Indian films, the same kind of applied with some differences. In Indian films, many non-Hindu actors changed their names to Hindu stage names to resonate with a wider audience, but also to escape the ire of their more conservative families and communities. An example of this was the legendary Indian actor Dilip Kumar. Dilip Kumar's birth name was actually Muhammad Yusuf Khan. In interviews, he said that his father was strictly against show business, so Dilip Kumar used a stage name to give himself some anonymity and to ensure that he did not dishonor his family or his community. Interestingly, the person who gave Dilip Kumar his breakthrough chance at becoming a star in Indian films was in fact Devika Rani of Bombay Talkies. Dilip Kumar and Madhubala were signed to Bombay Talkies in the 1940s, and it was reportedly Devika Rani who came up with both their stage names. In Jubilee, we are made aware that Roy Talkies is launching a new face, and there's a lot of hype surrounding this announcement. We then meet Binod Das, a character who is integral to the show, played by Upper Shakti Khurana. The character of Binod reminds me a lot of the character of Peter Baelish or Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. They are very manipulative of other characters, very ambitious and calculated, and they are ruthless in pursuit of their own interests. Where Binod is kind of different though is that he is deeply loyal to Srikanth Roy. Besides his own interests, he serves Srikanth Roy. From the very first episode, we are made aware that the character of Jamshed Khan has star quality. Jamshed Khan is a theatre actor. He is tall, he is handsome, and he has this intensity and gravitas when he is on screen. Binod shows hints of being very interested in acting. We get an idea of how deeply loyal Binod is to Srikanth when Srikanth gives him the insane task of bringing back his wife Sumitra Kumari, who has eloped with Jamshed Khan. Srikanth is aware that Sumitra and Jamshed had this love affair. This elopement is actually inspired by something that actually happened at Bombay Talkies. In 1935, a very married Devika Rani and her then co-star Najamul Hussain eloped to Calcutta while working on a romantic crime thriller film titled Javani Ki Hava. The elopement caused major production delays and financial strain for Bombay Talkies. It was also very out of character for Devika Rani to have eloped with her co-star. The hero was a tall and extremely good-looking actor, Najamul Hussain. Interestingly, his name was not changed for the screen. Devika and Najam were practically the same age, unlike Devika's husband Himanshu Rai, who was 16 years her senior. So far, Devika had only been close to one man, Himanshu. He had romanced her in real life and on screen, but to be drawn to Najam, a mere co-worker, was completely out of character for her, especially since she considered herself different from other actresses. She was particularly lonely during this time, and her marriage to Himanshu was collapsing due to his physical violence towards her and his rumored extramarital affairs. Sheikh Najamul Hussain had been selected out of 2,000 young men to play opposite Devika Rani. He had a gorgeous voice for the microphone, powerful eyes, and a face which photographed well. He was a graduate of Punjab University and all-round athlete and sportsman. He also studied music. In 1935, Devika was almost 28 years old. She was already being feted as the most beautiful woman on the Indian screen, even before the film was released. Unlike her husband and the businessmen of the film world, Najam was sensitive to her needs and happy to risk everything for a few hours with her, as indeed the consequences would have been terrible if they had been caught together. For Devika, this love affair was a complete anomaly. She was rebellious but a good girl, for whom honor meant a great deal. But Najam offered her something different, a new beginning. He also offered her love, a simple love, not the complex and hurtful offering from Himanshu. This legend of elopement is very similar to the characters of Sumitra and Jamshed. Like Najam, Binod mentions that Jamshed was chosen from thousands for this opportunity to become Madan Kumar at Bombay Talkies, but ultimately Jamshed chooses Sumitra and wants to leave the film world behind and stick to theatre acting, even though he was on the precipice of becoming this big superstar. So I watched some of the bonus material on Amazon Prime, and the creators of the show shared that someone who has pure intentions like Jamshed would only end up dead in the world of show business as he does in Jubilee, because unlike the other morally ambiguous characters on the show, he's the only character in the show who cares about the craft of acting and doing the right thing. In another very similar parallel to the show, Najam and Devika would also have been aware of how powerful Himanshu Rai was in Bombay, so they eloped. Himanshu managed to keep the gossip of this elopement out of the papers back in the day, but everyone at Bombay Talkies knew that this happened and rumors started to spread. When Najam ran off with Devika Rani, all of Bombay Talkies was in turmoil. The film they were making had gone onto the floor and some scenes had already been shot. The worst affected was Himanshu Rai. Not only did his wife leave him, but she was his partner at Bombay Talkies. Ultimately, Himanshu contacted Devika and asked for her to return. Evidently, he was the only one who really knew why she had left. He did his best to persuade her and agreed that she would retain her prime position in the studio. According to his family, who were never very fond of Devika, he threatened to sue Najam for adultery and divorce Devika. But because she came back stronger than she had left, it soon became apparent that she had the upper hand. Himanshu was simply unable to carry on without her. Behind their pact was the obvious understanding that the studio would collapse if either of them left. So Jamshed Khan's character seems to be inspired by Najmul Hussain and his very brief love affair and elopement with Devika Rani. In the show, we know what happens to Jamshed. He meets this very tragic end. But what happened to the real life Jamshed? After Devika Rani returned to her husband and Bombay Talkies, Najam became a distant memory. He was born into an aristocratic family and he was also married when he had this love affair with Devika Rani. The end of their relationship was a far greater loss for him and his career prospects in Bombay. He went on to join another film studio called New Theatres in Calcutta. New Theatres was established in 1931, and in 1935, New Theatres produced the first ever film adaptation of the novel Devdas. So if you watch Indian films, you would have grown up with a particular Devdas depending on your age. The Devdas I grew up with was obviously Shah Rukh Khan as Devdas and Aishwarya Rai Sparrow. Najam acted in a few other films after the scandal, but he never really rose to major stardom. He had just one major hit during this time. He then left for Pakistan in the post-partition years, and he worked in a few films in the 1960s and in the 1970s, and he passed away in 1980. The 1930s and 1940s had this rise of film studios like Bombay Talkies and New Theatres in the Indian film landscape that produced very socially relevant films and nurtured talent like Prithviraj Kapoor and Ashok Kumar. Ashok Kumar is especially interesting for our discussion on Jubilee. Ashok Kumar essentially replaced Najmul Hussein's spot at Bombay Talkies. His rise to stardom has a very interesting origin story that loosely parallels the origin story of Madan Kumar, minus any murder, of course. After the affair between Devika and Najam, Himanshu Rai wanted to find an actor who was loyal to him alone and would not dare have a love affair with his superstar wife. He also wanted someone who Devika would not be attracted to. Ashok Kumar's birth name was Kumudlal Kunjilal Ganguly. He came from a very respectable Bengali family. His father was a lawyer, but Kumudlal worked at Bombay Talkies behind the scenes as a lab assistant. Himanshu Rai saw potential in him. Unlike Binod in the series, he was very reluctant to become an actor. Himanshu took a chance on this very young lab assistant, and many people at Bombay Talkies did not see any star quality in him. The German director Franz Osten at Bombay Talkies Talkies was reportedly not sold on the young man. The director believed that he did not have a conventional hero look to play a leading role opposite his employer and the superstar Devika Rani. But he eventually agreed and became Ashok Kumar at Bombay Talkies. There were reports that he made many mistakes during filming at first because he was just so nervous to be around Devika Rani. Ashok Kumar's debut film was this film in 1936 with his co-star Devika Rani. The film was a major success and these two became an unlikely hit on-screen couple for a time. Ashok Kumar went on to become a legendary and celebrated actor in Indian films and had a hugely successful film career for around 6 decades. One of the major themes in Jubilee is loyalty. Every character in the show struggles in some capacity with this. We have to question, who are the characters actually loyal to? How and why do their loyalties change? How does their ambition affect their loyalty to others? In the show, Binod orchestrates this plan to separate Sumitra and Jamshed. They both wanted to escape to Karachi and he actually stops that. But we then realize that Binod wants to be Madan Kumar. He is driven by his ambition for status, fame and power. And it is at the cost of a man's life. Binod really takes out his frustration on a wounded and helpless Jamshed during the riots. It was at this point that I, as a viewer, realized that Binod is actually quite a sinister character. Srikanth wanted Jamshed and Sumitra to be brought back to Bombay Talkies. So this violent attack came from Binod alone. You guys can vote on the best scene of Jubilee. The final scene of this episode is actually so good and so chilling. It's one of my favorite scenes in this entire show. It's so powerful. Tell me in the comments which scene from Jubilee you think is actually amazing. There's so many scenes in the show that are just so good, but this has to be a nominee. This has to be in the running. I want to break down this scene because it's just so excellent. So in this scene, Srikanth approaches Binod while he's working behind the scenes. And he knows that Binod assaulted Jamshed. He had them followed. He has photographs of what happened. Srikanth is quite angry because he told Binod that he wants his wife and his next Madan Kumar to come back to Bombay Talkies. And when he addresses Binod about this, Binod is very meek at first, telling Srikanth that we will find another star. And then Binod uses this opportunity to act out the very famous Madan Kumar dialogue that we saw in earlier scenes and that we as viewers have become familiar with. And at first, Srikanth doesn't realize what he's doing, but then there's this moment that it registers to him that Binod kind of left Jamshed to die because he wants this opportunity to be Madan Kumar. Binod is now completely at the mercy of Srikanth because not only does he want to be Madan Kumar, but he basically left a man to die and assaulted a man for this opportunity. The final shot that we see reflects this dynamic. Binod is literally and figuratively at the complete mercy of Srikanth. He is in a fetal position, hiding his face, while Srikanth towers over him, looking down at him. The fire burns in the background. They are both these shadowy figures in more ways than one. It's an excellent visual representation of the characters and their positions going forward. Srikanth puts the photographic evidence away, knowing that this may be useful in the future. He knows that Binod is now completely under his control. The background music and the music in Jubilee in general is exceptional. It adds so much to the scene. This is definitely one of the best closing scenes ever for an episode of a show. I love this scene so much. I can watch it over again and again. In this first episode, we also meet a few other characters. Ram Kapoor as Shamsher Singh Walia, Sidhant Gupta as Jay Khanna, and Wamika Gabi as Nilufar. I'm going to focus on them in upcoming videos in this series, in my review and analysis. There's just too much to talk about. So follow along and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. Every actor in this show was absolutely excellent in their roles. It's really going to be a treat to talk about their storylines. Like I said before, loyalty is a major theme in this show, and I read this book titled The Longest Kiss, The Life and Times of Devika Rani by Kishwar Desai. It's an excellent book. I would definitely recommend it, but there is this passage that describes what happened one day, years after Himanshu Rai had died and after Devika Rani had left Bombay Talkies, when Ashok Kumar actually visited the studio, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Ashok Kumar found a large marble bust of Himanshu Rai lying on the floor of the studio, dusty and and covered with bird droppings. He would clean it up and take it home. And I just thought that was such an interesting story about Ashok Kumar and his loyalty to the man who actually gave him this big opportunity to be a star, which he took. Jubilee highlights the golden era of Indian cinema, which is believed to be the 1950s and 1960s. But before Bollywood, there was Bombay Talkies. And in a way, through these characters, this show really highlights these forgotten people and this forgotten period in Indian film history. So in this series, we're going to talk about it. So follow along for my analysis and review of episode 2. I'll see you guys in the next video.